Training camp is open, and the New York Football Giants are set to begin the John Harbaugh era. What's their upside in this, his first season as the team's head coach? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could join us for another edition and another season of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. We're here now for our third consecutive year. You guys have demanded it, so that's why the New York Giants on SI people have decided to bring it to you. So the Giants have been on the road heading down to Greenbrier, the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia today. They will be there through their last practice of the first half of training camp through the 8th of August. Then they will come back to the Meadowlands. There will be no public viewing of the Giants' practices in East Rutherford this year. Now, the Giants are undergoing a whole new renovation scheme at their training center, their headquarters, if you will. So with the construction, which has really caused a lot of havoc on the property, and the destruction, if you will, of all of the stuff that was built in the Sports Authority parking lot to accommodate the World Cup folks. Because of those two issues, the Giants knew since last fall that they were going to have to be away for the first third or so of training camp. Actually, it's more like the first quarter of training camp, to be honest with you. And so that's why they had to figure out a way to get out of here. They landed at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia, which is a out of the way, to be frank, it's kind of like a golf resort. If you know anything about that place, it was built many, many years ago, and it was actually considered one of the emergency home bases for the White House, for the president and his staff. They actually have a bomb shelter and a bunker in the basement of the hotel where, in case of an emergency, it was one of the locations where the President of the United States and his cabinet could actually go and hide out, if you will, in the middle of a conflict. So that's where the Giants are headed. It's an old, fancy resort hotel. It's got tennis courts. It's got hiking trails. It's got golf courses. It's quite a sprawling piece of property. And they also have an actual football training facility with some football fields and a locker room. Now, how did that happen? Well, many years ago, Sean Payton, when he was coaching the New Orleans Saints, was the first one from the NFL to approach the Greenbrier and say, hey, listen, this would be a great place to have a training camp if you guys decided that you want to go in that direction. And consequently, they did. So in cooperation with the Saints, they decided to formulate plans to make their resort not just a getaway for a lot of people, because it is in the middle of West Virginia in kind of a nowheresville kind of location, but also to be a potential football training camp site. Now, over the years, I believe not only the Saints, but the Browns, the Raiders, I believe there are a couple of other teams that have had their training camps at the Greenbrier Resort. In addition to that, there have also been some college teams that have had their training camps at the Greenbrier. So this is not a new idea. This is not something that the Giants pulled out of a hat like a magician with a rabbit. No, this is something that a number of teams have done over the years. They can only get one team there at a time. They were looking for a team to come down there this year, and the Giants were in need of a location. And so it fit. And that's why the Giants are down at the Greenbrier Resort. All right, so what do we know? We know that the Giants had a few moves the last couple of days. Okay? Let's take it back. Since today is Tuesday the 28th, let's just go back to late last week. In fact, we'll take you back to Thursday the 23rd, when tight end Thomas Fidone, defensive tackle Sam Roberts, defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris were all put on the PUP list, which means until taken off the list, they cannot do anything on the field during camp. they can only work with the trainers. Well, good news. Fedoni and Roberts passed their physicals earlier today in the morning. So now that they've passed their physicals, they are no longer on PUP and they are eligible to participate in practice drills. Roy Robertson Harris is doing very well. The Giants are optimistic that he would be able to join them at some point later in the season, perhaps for the last month or so. If the Giants are playing any meaningful football games at that point, that would be a great addition to the squad. That's why they didn't put him on IR. Obviously, John Harbaugh talked about that at a press briefing some weeks ago when he said, look, we're going to hold out hope. We're going to try not to put him on IR if we don't have to. And so at this point, they don't have to. What else happened in the last several days? Well, defensive lineman C.J. Ravenel, who had been claimed earlier, was waived because of a non-football injury. Linebacker Cam Jones also was waived. And then today, the Giants made it official. A couple of 15 tryouts came in yesterday, and they made it official today by signing tight end Tyler Moore and defensive lineman Marlon Davidson. So that gets you a little bit caught up on exactly where the Giants are news-wise. Now, for those of you who were very concerned about 3 of the Giants' injured players, well, obviously noticeable by their absence on the PUP list, Cam Scatterbo, Darius Slayton, and Malik Neighbors. Now, the PUP list had to be filed by 4 o'clock today, so it was excellent news that, in fact, once the 4 o'clock deadline passed for the transactions with the NFL offices, that none of those 3 guys were put on the list. We know about the sports hernia or groin injury for Slayton, but obviously he's been working with the trainers and rehabbing well. We know Malik Neighbors had the very serious knee surgery last season. Well, he's also been busting his butt working with the trainers, and obviously to this point, the Giants feel okay because he did pass his physical and he's not on the PUP list. Now, that doesn't mean he won't be limited during practice. I certainly think they will wean him in. They'll probably wean in Slayton as well. And Cam Scatterbo, coming off that serious ankle surgery from last season, he passed his physical too. So all 3 of those players are eligible to participate in some drills at practice. Now, which drills? Who knows? Don't know for sure which drills they will be used in. Will they possibly be used in 1 or 2 drills? Maybe. Positional drills? Maybe. Will they actually take some snaps as part of the actual offense? Maybe. We don't know the answer to that yet. We're just going to have to wait and see. But the good news is, at least they are eligible to take some practice reps in whatever shape and form that the trainers decide they're going to give them. So that's where it stands as far as the roster. A couple of things to keep in mind about the roster. And by the way, this is probably a really good time to tell you that we do have a special guest tonight, former Super Bowl champion and current Giants sideline reporter on the radio, also on TV during the preseason games, Howard Cross, Giants legend, if you will, is going to join us in just a little bit, and we will hear from him his thoughts on the reconfigured Giants roster. Now, that's something I want to touch on right here because as the Giants open training camp with their 90-man roster, approximately 45% of the roster are newcomers, whether they are rookies or veterans. About 45% of the 90-man roster are newcomers who are Giants for only the first time this year. The Giants have 14 rookies amongst their 90-man roster. Okay? We all know half of them drafted, half of them undrafted rookie free agents. We also know that John Harbaugh, 18 years coaching the Baltimore Ravens, 12 playoff seasons, including a Super Bowl, an overall record with Baltimore, a 61% winning percentage, 13-11 in the postseason. Now, I want to give you a couple numbers, folks, because we've all talked about how the Giants are starting the regular season this year with the Dallas Cowboys and then the Los Angeles Rams. Well, it's important for the Giants to get off to a good start. I think we all acknowledge that. And obviously, every divisional game is kind of worth 2 in the standings, as every coach will also remind you, just because of the tie-breaking situations. And, you play your own division 6 times during the course of the season. Well, here's what's important. And by the way, I got to add something here. I want to make sure I do this because I know there's a lot of other people who want to get in on this program, and I think I forgot to RT. Yeah, I did. See that? I forgot to RT the live stream, which would give people an opportunity to watch on X if they don't want to watch on YouTube. So I will do that now as I am discussing John Harbaugh's record. All right, so here's the deal. 61%, I already told you that, is terms of his John Harbaugh's career winning percentage with the Baltimore Ravens. And again, we have talked about how the Giants want to get off to a great start. Okay, so here's the deal. During his 18 years in Baltimore, okay, John Harbaugh, over the first 4 games of the regular season, because coaches love to break up the schedule into quarters. And I know there are 17 games now. I get it. But coaches still like to go 4, 4, 4, 5. Combined over 18 years with the Ravens, from weeks 1 to 4, John Harbaugh's career record is 44-28. That also happens to be a 61% winning percentage. The only 2 times that he was under 500 over the first 4 games of the regular season, the Ravens were 1-3 last season and 1-3 in 2015. So to translate that backwards, in 16 of his 18 seasons at the helm of the Ravens, they were at least 2-2 through the first 4 games. Furthermore, opening day, week 1 of the regular season, John Harbaugh has an overall record of 12-6, including 5-1 on opening day against a division rival. These are all very significant numbers, all leaning heavily on the successful side of the ledger. Now, why do I bring all of this up? Well, because we know the Giants have had trouble over the course of the last decade getting off to good starts. But if you put 2 and 2 together, what do we hear about John Harbaugh, and what do we know from already during his first offseason program with the Giants? He runs a tough ship. They spend every minute that they possibly can working on their craft. They are disciplined. They are detailed. They are intense and energetic sessions. That is how John Harbaugh runs his show. An awful lot like Tom Coughlin used to. I think, as we have talked about many times over the years, September football, the first 4 games, is usually not high-quality football. It's usually sloppy because the CBA has watered down training camp. We know that most coaches don't play their regulars or their starters very much during the preseason. So what you have is pseudo preseason games in September as teams try to work out their kinks and try to find their sea legs and find their rhythm for the rest of the season. Well, certainly the Giants have not found their rhythm quickly enough for the last decade or so. But see, because John Harbaugh runs a very tough ship during the offseason and a very tough training camp, which we've heard, by the way, some of his former Ravens players take note of. I won't use the word complain, but take note of. I think it's pretty clear that his statistics, his winning ways, were formulated by the way he conducted his spring programs and his training camps. The proof is in the pudding. The numbers are there across the board in every facet. He gets off to his teams, I don't want to say him, his teams get off to good starts. That's just the way it's been for 18 years. That's not a small sample size. There's got to be a reason for it. And so I'm going to associate that reason with the fact that he does prepare his teams very, very well and better than most head coaches as they approach opening day. So I want you folks to keep that in mind as the Giants get set for what will be a Week 1 game at home at MetLife Stadium against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, one other item I do want to give you as we open up with our season preview and our training camp preview of the New York Football Giants here in 2026. John Harbaugh has a total of 22 core coaches on his staff. When I say core coaches, I'm talking about his coordinators. There's 3 of those: offense, defense, and special teams. Then, of course, he's got the position coaches, the assistant position coaches, special teams coaches, and he's got a couple of football analysts / quality control guys. The core coaching staff is made up of 22 people. I think there is some relevance that 13 of those 22 people came with John Harbaugh from the Baltimore Ravens. Make no mistake about it. He has already put his thumbprint on this New York Giants organization. 13 out of 22 coaches on his staff came with him from Baltimore since January. Okay, what else can I tell you? The Giants have 3 holdover coaches from last season. Charlie Bullen, the outside linebackers coach and rush defense coordinator, he decided to stay for his 3rd season with the Giants. Chad Hall, who was an assistant quarterbacks coach last year, has decided to stay. It's his 2nd season with the Giants. He is now the wide receivers coach. And tight end coach Tim Kelly. He is in his 3rd season with the Giants. He, like Bullen, had the same job that he had last season. So, I hope that gets you caught up on where things stand as the Giants get ready for the 2026 season. All right, so I invite you guys to call me. I invite you guys to hit us up on the chat, and I invite you guys to participate in this program, because after all, if you don't want to get excited and participate now, when's a better time? And by the way, he's back. Tudo has found us again from the Italian national rugby team. Tudo is always finding us. I hope I gave you guys enough notice on X starting yesterday that we would be bringing the program back today. And by the way, a programming note, we're going to take off next week and then be back for our regular weekly programming the following week. That would be the week of August 10th, when the Giants return to East Rutherford. They'll be back at their home base. That's when they're really going to dig in. And that's the week that they'll be preparing for their preseason home opener on August 15th. That would be that Saturday at home against the Minnesota Vikings. So stick with my Twitter page at GiantsWFAN, and as we get closer, I will give you more details as to when to expect the program, and that will be the first of our weekly shows. We'll go right back to our regular schedule like always. But I wanted to get you the kickoff show for training camp. I wanted to do that today because I know everybody is excited that the Giants actually reported today. They took their physicals, and technically, today is the start of training camp. So I thought it was important to give you guys a show today, even though the only thing the guys did was come in to take their physicals. They ran sprints for their conditioning drills, and that's it. They didn't do anything else other than go in transit to West Virginia. So there's no practices, there's no media sessions to talk about, but nonetheless, it's an important day because it's the opening of training camp, and so I thought it was important that we do a show for you guys tonight and kind of catch you up on things. Now, Tudo says, massive salutes to Big Paulie, king of New York media podcast, and all diehard Giant fans across the pond. Greeting from our entire Italian squads. Cheers, mate. And Tudo, thanks as always. We absolutely appreciate Tudo. He is a very, very loyal participant and supporter of our programming here on the New York Giants on SI. It means the world to me that we have loyal fans who will continue to watch and listen. And of course, Tudo also incredibly generous as well. And what can I say? I salute you, Tudo, and I hope things are well. Hope you're healthy. Hope your team's healthy, and hope you guys are doing very well with your roster. All right, so now I think enough of time about setting things up. Let's get to the first part of our interview. Earlier today, I asked Howard Cross, Giants sideline reporter, and of course, legendary tight end and Super Bowl champion. I asked Howard, first up, the most important question of New York Giants training camp. I asked him for the key to quarterback Jaxson Dart's improvement this season. That would be in year 2 of his New York Giants career.
Overall awareness. I think Jaxson Dart's a competitor. I think Jaxson Dart throws a good ball, finds a way with his legs to make some plays, here and there. But overall awareness that his actual ability is useless if he's not available. And I think that his that I'm fiery. I'm like, you got to remember, the guys on the other side of the ball get paid too. They get paid a lot. And even though it's a different world than when I played, they get paid to hit you. And if they can hit you cleanly, they will, and it could take you out of a game.
Now, what would you say to some of the veteran guys like Odell Beckham Jr., Isaiah Lakely, the tight end, of course, that's the position that you played, Juju Smith-Schuster, Darnell Mooney, some of these veterans who have now joined the Giants, they're new faces for this organization, and they're new faces for Dart. What would you do if you were in their position to help him get more comfortable with you, to learn how to trust you, and to become a key part of that passing game?
Well, the easiest guy to explain would be the guy that everybody maybe should model themselves after, and that would be Odell. I think Likely is also is a really good receiver, but Odell has always been an extreme competitor for the ball, right? So he goes up, he fights for the ball, he runs good routes and all that stuff, but when you throw it in his direction, he really goes up and fights for the ball. That's what made him, a exciting player when he was with the Giants. That's what made him an exciting player and valuable around the league. And now that he's back and healthy, but a lot older, but still healthy, he's still going to compete for the ball, and guys are going to watch that and see this guy going after the ball a lot, and it's going to make a big difference in how they approach the game. Some guys, are going to be like, okay, he's an older guy. They're going to be like, wait a minute, he wouldn't got that. So that's going to make them pick it up, and I think Likely's kind of in that same vein.
With the very crowded wide receiver room that the Giants are bringing to training camp, and we don't know exactly how many they'll keep or which ones they'll keep, how much of a challenge, first of all, do you think it is for Odell Beckham Jr. to actually make this team, given the numbers that he's going to have to fight?
Well, right now, if you think about it, I think it's the kid Davis. I think his name is from Notre Dame.
Oh, Fields.
Fields, sorry, I'm thinking of another kid, but Fields, not a blazer, not a big open down the field threat, but a big body guy that's probably going to be great in the red zone. His main probably thing he's going to work on is contact. When you're that big and you're getting contacted, he's got to play big. He can't just play like a receiver. He's got to play like he's got to be a Sterling Sharp kind of guy where you're running routes and like regardless of what they're doing, you're just slapping guys out of the way and keep going kind of guy if that's legal these days. Then you got like the receiver room is kind of smart. Like we think of Malik Neighbors as the receiver, but I'm waiting for him to be 100%. I hear reports that he's getting close. He's great, but that could be game 1 or it could be game 7. I don't know, and I'm not becoming a doctor all of a sudden. You got Slayton, a good receiver, getting a little older, but a good receiver. It just the receiver room doesn't have a lot of juice in it right now, and they're trying to get guys. You lost Robinson from last year. You got to get guys that when Dart drops back, he's looking up. He's looking at guys that are like going to compete for the ball every time he throws it, and that's what he's going to be looking for. Guys that can get open, guys that are going to be competing for the ball. That's what I said. Likely he's going to be a great target because he's that mid-range guy. He can also get down the field, but he's that mid-range guy as a matchup. Fields is going to be a good guy down in the red zone. Odell's going to be a competitive guy in the receiver room. Slayton's going to continue to be trying to get himself downfield if he can keep his hamstrings healthy. And then everybody else is kind of like mishmashing in a little bit. No one to me has really been, oh well, this is our guy. This guy is going to stand out. Oh wow, this is our guy. Hodgins, he's been there off and on. Very dependable receiver. Can get things done. But like I said, to see a guy that's this is our ex receiver. This is the guy that's going to stand alone, and you have to have attention on him. We don't have exactly that right now, and that's what we're working on.
I'm not going to ask you to be a doctor, Howard, because I'm not a doctor and neither are you. So we don't exactly know when Neighbors will get back to 100%, but I think it's fair to assume, at least at the beginning of the season, he may not be quite himself. And the Giants will have to spread the ball around a lot to the other receivers, or maybe John Harbaugh, who uses a lot of 2 tight end formations over his career, he certainly has. Is it possible that guys like Theo Johnson and Isaiah Likely take some of the target shares away from the wide receivers because of their receiving ability?
Yeah, it's definitely likely. It's going to be interesting to see. That would mean that they would be incorporating a lot of run and a play action, which would totally, if you can get the running backs, the Singletaries, the Scadaboos, the Tracys, going downfield, even with the new ginormous fullback that we have, you get all of those guys involved in the game and having guys having to come up and press against them. Theo on one side, Likely on the other side, could be a nightmare for defense trying to cover guys, not knowing if they got to commit to the run first. The safeties will be down. No one will see the fullback coming out of the backfield, untouched right at him to block him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these guys basically blend together. I think the tight ends could be a big factor, as the 2 tight ends said, especially early in the season because of that.
Yeah, Patrick Ricard, the fullback that you mentioned, he is one heck of a horse at 260 pounds. And he's one of the reasons why Harbaugh played bully ball when he was with the Ravens, and one of the reasons why we think the Giants will pound it out a lot this upcoming season. You got Scadaboo, you got Tracy, you got Singletary. Howard, how much do you think the run-pass split may wind up developing with this offense, given the fact that they clearly want to be more powerful and more physical?
I think it's more necessity than want, right? I think until you get your wide receiver room secure and who's going to be there, you got the downfield, the mid range, the intermediate, the ones on you go to the quick passes on the outside. Until you have that totally secure, you're going to have to really lean on your run. You don't want to put your quarterback in jeopardy because nobody's open. You want to make sure that the run is like dictating the entire offense and making sure defenses are on their toes. That means they're going to take a cornerback out, bring in, take a safety out and bring a linebacker in, trying to make sure that the Giants aren't running the ball down their throat. And that's going to create, even with the offensive line, if they're fully intact and fully healthy, that could be a major issue going forward for those guys.
All right, so when the Giants do run the ball, we've heard John Harbaugh talk about Scadaboo coming off of the ankle surgery, how he says, hey, I've watched tape on this guy. He's a really good back. Do you think that it'll be a mix and match and backfield by committee? Because we've also seen Tracy run the ball extremely well when he got the chance.
I think it's going to be very interesting because remember, Tracy was running the ball without a lead blocker a lot. And maybe the tight end was trying to come in with 12 personnel and be the lead blocker. But to actually have a fullback to hit that guy as you're trying to go through the hole with the speed that Tracy has could be a problem for some defenses. I think that the running back room or the running back combo between Scadaboo and Tracy is going to make a big difference because you got this guy that's really a downhill runner in Scadaboo, and you got a guy that can break it in Tracy. And I think the fullback is going to give Tracy a new leash on life. With that lead blocker is going to, is going to keep that first guy right out of his face and let him take that next step. And when he gets that next step, it's going to be interesting to see, how they're going to handle him and how he's going to do.
All right. We will hear more from Howard Cross in just a little bit, and he will talk a little bit more about the Giants' offensive line, specifically first-round draft pick Si Si Mauigoa, and the position change that Mauigoa is making from his days with the University of Miami. Interesting to note, folks, if you know anything about Giants history, and obviously that's my specialty, the Giants had a fullback for each of their 4 Super Bowl championship seasons. Maurice Carthon was the blocking back for Joe Morris in '86. He was the blocking back for Otis Anderson and Rodney Hampton in 1990, right? I mean, we all know that. You guys will remember Madison Hedgecock, for sure. You remember Greg Comella, was the 2000 fullback, and that was unfortunately the year that the Giants lost to the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl, the 2000 season, Super Bowl 35. But I'm sure you remember that. The Giants, whenever the Giants have used a fullback, it has worked heavily to their advantage. And they were able to pound the ball. They were able to impose their will on the opposition. They were able to control the 4-minute game at the end of a game or at the end of a half when they needed to dominate the clock. And quite frankly, half the teams in the NFL now expect to employ a starting fullback. Now, whether or not they use them X number of plays is another story. But half of the teams in the league seem to be very well prepared to give up one of their 53 roster spots to a fullback. And make no mistake about it, Patrick Ricard, who's gone to 6 Pro Bowls, I believe, with the Baltimore Ravens, is a horse at 260 pounds. He is just a ferocious road grader. And he will not touch the ball in the running game. That's not what he did in Baltimore. In fact, I think he was allergic to the ball in Baltimore. Now, let me not go that far because they did throw him some passes. He did catch some passes out of the backfield. But he was non-existent in terms of carrying the ball for the run, even down by the goal line. No, it was his job. It was his job to plow the way for whoever was carrying the ball behind him. And of course, again, I don't want to forget 2011, Hynoski, Lahaino, Henry Hynoski was the fullback in 11, Hedgecock in 7. So that's it. It's very simple. Every year the Giants went to the Super Bowl, they had a fullback, a legit fullback. I don't know how many more times I need to say it. I've been saying it for a long time, for the better part of the last decade. And this year, the Giants have decided that that's the way they want to go. I, for one, think it's a great idea. All right. We will hear more from Howard Cross in just a few minutes. Folks, if you want to hit us up in the chat, it's over there on the side of the screen. I do want to also say thank you to Tudo once again, because Tudo has come back with another sign of appreciation, and also saying, Big Paulie, I'll be the only solution to all the Giants' D problems, mate. Please suit me up in Giants gear, and I promise you opposing quarterbacks and O-lines won't walk off the pitch on their own powers, mate. An OC's nightmares. I have absolutely no doubt about Tudo's toughness, his intensity, his energy, and his physical prowess. I have no doubt about any of that. And I am sure he would fit in very well with the linebacker room on this team, which, by the way, let me just say, Brian Burns, for sure, we'll still need to see more from Tremaine Edmonds, who's only been here now for a few months. Abdul Carter had a great surge at the end of last season. We know Arvell Reese, coming out of Ohio State, appears to be plug and play, ready to go. And of course, Kayvon Thibodeau has labored through a lot of injuries in his early career, and that's hurt his availability. But I have no doubt that Brian Burns could have played with the Parcells linebacking crew, known as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. You know, the original Giants linebackers were the Crunch Bunch in 1981. Harry Carson and Brian Kelly in the middle, Brad Van Pelt, and of course Lawrence Taylor on the outside. Those were the four starting backers for that 81 team, and they were called the Crunch Bunch. And then as things developed over time and things changed, you know, Brian Kelly was gone, Brad Van Pelt was gone, both of them left prior to the 83 season. Well, what did you have? You know, Gary Reasons moved in there into the inside. You had Carl Banks take one of the outside spots opposite Lawrence Taylor. Carson was still there. And then, of course, Pepper Johnson also wound up coming in 86 and worked his way into the lineup and was a big part of the 1990 team. And so was, quite honestly, Steve DiAsi, who was a big part of the inside linebackers in 1990. Johnny Cooks was another guy who was instrumental in that championship, but they became known as the Big Blue Wrecking Crew during the Parcells era. It was the Crunch Bunch when Ray Perkins had them in 81, and then they morphed under Bill Parcells into the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. And I think that Brian Burns, to be long-winded about this point, I believe that Brian Burns is a guy who would have fit in with the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. He is that kind of player. He plays through pain. He's a warrior. He's intense. He's determined. He gives you 150% all the time. He's selfless. He's an outstanding leader. Brian Burns, second team All-Pro last season. I think he should have been first team All-Pro, but he was voted second team All-Pro. 16 and a half sacks, second in the National Football League. He's in his prime. He was determined last season to try to lead the league in sacks. He didn't quite get there. He also told me it was important to him to be a first-team All-Pro. That didn't happen either. He got to be second-team All-Pro. But you know what? He's driven. His motor is still as hot as it was last year. And I'm looking for another huge season out of Brian Burns. I digress. And oh, by the way, let me just throw a little bit of a promo out for what I do during my day job when I'm working with Giants.com. I did do a podcast, a huddle podcast that went up yesterday on Giants.com with the legendary announcer, Sam Rosen. Now, most Giants fans also, if they're hockey fans, they happen to be crossover New York Rangers fans. Now, everybody knows that Sam Rosen, 40 years as the voice of the New York Rangers, and he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and deservedly so. But, he also put in 24 years as one of the voices of the NFL on Fox and did many Giants games during the course of his Fox career. In addition to that, for nearly 20 years, over the span of about 24, 25, he was the New York Giants preseason television voice. Worked with guys like Tucker Frederickson and Bobby Doohan back in the late 70s and early 80s. Then later on worked with Carl Nelson and Dave Jennings and Harry Carson and Phil McConkey. In those days, the Giants preseason games were on Pix in New York, Channel 11, and then later they were on WOR, Channel 9 in New York. Anyway, just to give you a little bit of a self-promo, I had an opportunity the other day to talk to Sam Rosen for about a half hour about his career working Giants games. We talked a little Rangers at the end too, so you Rangers fans don't feel like you're left out. There's a speck of Rangers stuff in there at the end of the interview. But I just want to make sure you guys know that that Sam Rosen interview is up on the Giants Huddle on Giants.com, up on the website. And especially for you folks who are 50 years old or younger, there's a lot there to give you a flavor of what it was like to be around the Bill Parcells era of New York Giants football, a golden era, which of course resulted in 2 Super Bowl championship trophies, Vince Lombardi trophies, and then was repeated, of course, by Tom Coughlin. But you're probably young enough to remember Tom Coughlin's era. Some of you may not be old enough to remember the Bill Parcells era and how great guys like Phil Simms and Harry Carson and George Martin and Leonard Marshall and Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks and Joe Morris and all those guys, Mark Bavaro, how great those guys actually were. So great memories from Sam Rosen, who is a mentor of mine, a friend of mine, and it was so awesome to catch up with him. That's over on the Giants.com website. It's the Giants Huddle, just went up yesterday. All right, folks, if you want to get in, you can get me over in the chat. You can also get me here at the bottom of the screen by going to this StreamYard slug. That will get you here into the program. You can do an audio call, or if you put your camera on, you can do a video call. Let me quickly get to a couple of the chats, and then I want to go back to the interview that we did with Howard Cross, because he's got a lot more to say. James O'Keefe, NY2TC, says, hi, Paul. Training camp is finally upon us. I saw on BBKL you were a bit amped up yesterday. I was today too, James, just so you know, both days. We share your excitement and enthusiasm, and I appreciate that because right now there's a lot to be excited about around Giants Nation. Let's see, what do we have here? Anybody else here that we have? Got some guys talking amongst each other. James also says, up to Tudo, I keep petitioning for you to be the Giants international player on the squad. Hey, by the way, let me notate to you guys, I mentioned to you earlier that the Giants have 14 rookies on their roster. Well, they do have an international exemption. Tudo, if you're out there still, I don't know if you're still tuned in. I don't know how much of the program you're able to listen to live, but the Giants do have an international exemption player on their roster right now. He is offensive lineman Gerard Gray. He is an Australian rugby player. And other than that, I don't know anything else about him. But he is wearing number 79. It's Gerard Gray. I believe he says it's Gerard. It could be Jared, but I believe it's Gerard Gray. He is an Australian rugby player, and he is an international exemption guy who does not count against the Giants roster. And he is their selection for the international exemption. This is the third time, by the way, since the league some years ago allowed teams to have an international exemption on their roster. This is, no, it's not the third time. It's the fourth time the Giants have had one. They've had 4 since the rule came to be. Oh my goodness, I want to say about a decade or so ago. They've had 4 different times they've had an international exemption player on their team. James O'Keefe says, Henry Hinoski, Hino the Rhino. Yes, indeed. That was him. James also says, Pancake Pat, regarding Pat Ricard, is going to be steamrolling this year behind a beefed-up low line, and then the D will get to tackle scat. Let the good times roll. James O'Keefe also throwing in great interview with Sam Rosen. He's one of the best play-by-play announcers in sports, and there was no question about that. And James, may I also say, I'm proud to be his friend. I'm proud to know him. Again, one of my mentors in the business. I'm going into my 44th season of covering New York Giants football, 18th as part of the official broadcast team. And I got to know Sam back in the day, back in those early to mid 80s, when not only was he doing Giants preseason football as the TV announcer, but he was also doing a show called the Prestone Giants Journal, which was a show that was on here in New York on MSG Network. It was a weekly program. And every Wednesday, Sam would come down to the facility and spend the 2 hours watching practice. I usually was there with him and Dick Lynch, and then later years, Dave Jennings. We'd watch 2 hours of practice, and then Sam would go up to the press box, take Parcells up there with him, and they would have to tape their segment for the Prestone Giants Journal. That's how I got to know Sam. So anyway, I just throw that out there for you. Also, MPR 254, can you see 5 safeties making the 53? I do not. I suspect the Giants will be a little bit more corner heavy, but remember, Ardarius Washington is a veteran defensive back that they brought over from the Ravens. John Harbaugh really likes him. He's like 5'9" in size. Some people list him at 5'8". He's not very big, but he just finds a way to make plays, has a nose for the ball. He's got a knack, good instincts, and he can play some corner, some slot corner specifically, and some roving safety. So I think Washington becomes kind of the hybrid defensive back where he could do some of safety stuff, some nickel stuff, some corner stuff. I think your 3 safeties are going to be Newbin, Holland, and Pinnock, and I think Washington becomes your 4th safety, and I think that's where they cut it off. We have Lip the Unknown Forces. What is your opinion of OBJ's chances on making the 53? Well, we just heard from a little bit about that from Howard Cross, who thinks that Beckham actually can set a great example for the other receivers in the Giants wide receiver room. Because when they see him at 33, 34 years old, make plays that he makes, it will inspire them and make them push even harder to make plays themselves so that they can prove that they belong on the team. I think he has a chance, a real chance. But my point with Beckham has always been he's not going to play special teams, which you usually need at the back of the wide receiver depth chart. And the other thing is he going to be durable? Is he going to be healthy enough that you can get nearly a full season out of him? Those are questions that I can't answer. But I'll say this. I think if Odell Beckham Jr. is healthy enough to get through training camp without having to be sidelined, yes, I do think he squeaks on to the 53. I think he's got a real good chance to do it. But that's if he can get through the entire training camp and preseason without having to miss practices because of an injury. And Lord knows he has an extensive injury history. I think everybody is rooting for him. John Harbaugh himself said before they signed him a couple of weeks earlier, he said, I have no doubt that he's got enough ability to make a 53-man roster in the National Football League. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I've watched him during training camp or the spring camp. I don't have any doubts about that. He can make an NFL roster. He can. He still has the talent to do it. But can he hold up? Will his body be durable enough so that you can award him a roster spot and you can count on him for most of the season? CGC Torag says, the man, the myth, the legend, Paulie D. Well, you're awfully kind, and I do appreciate that. Hey, folks, keep hitting me up on the chat. If you want to hit me up with a phone call or an audio call or a video call, do that as well. But for now, I want to go back to part two of our interview with longtime Giants tight end, Super Bowl champion, and sideline reporter Howard Cross. And what I asked Howard was, some NFL experts believed that Si Si Mauigoa was the best tackle in this NFL draft. Some people thought he might be the second best tackle in the draft. Others said, well, there's the potential to move him inside. Well, the Giants at this point have initially pegged him to be in the competition as the starting right guard. And I think when you draft a guy as highly as they did, obviously he's got a leg up. It's kind of going to be his spot to almost lose. Although John Harbaugh is not just giving spots away, you have to think that that's in the plan right now, that he'll be at right guard starting in week one. So they know that he had a lot of practice time at guard with the Hurricanes. Even though he played tackle, he was very willing and eager to play guard. So they gave him a lot of practice reps at guard, even though he only played tackle in games while he was in college. Howard Cross thinks that he'll be able to navigate the slide inside without too much trouble.
It's not as much of a challenge you think. When you're playing tackle, that person that's on, especially right tackle, what's outside your right hand is open air, and you have to cover all that area. When you're playing guard, what's outside your hand is the tackle. What's outside your other hand is the center. So you got like you're in a bubble in there, and you don't have to move as much laterally. With a guy that has the ability to move laterally, I think the twists are going to work better, because when the tackle winds up going wide for the twist and leaves that big hole, he'll have the speed and the agility to cover that space. It's going to be harder for them to run the ET twist on the inside or the TE the other way. So that's going to be good. I think that he's powerful enough, like he is a tackle. That's going to be the big moment. Is he going to be powerful enough? I think he will be, to take on those defensive tackles in the run block, to push them back, to create those holes. That would be the challenge, is that, when you're playing against defensive ends, they're fast, but when you're playing against the run, you're getting your body on them and you just run them out of the hole, or you smash them down inside. When you're playing against the tackles, they're putting up a fight the entire time. You're not, in a lot of cases, you're not able to just lift them and move them out of the way. You got to bear down. So his big challenge will come when he's facing some of the bigger D tackles in the league.
All right, let's flop it to defense, Howard. The big story for the Giants the last couple of years is not being able to stop the running game. And we all know that. We've watched it week in and week out. Dexter Lawrence, when he was at his best, was a very unique individual, but he's not here anymore, traded to Cincinnati. Guys like DJ Reader, Shelby Harris, Darius Alexander in his second year are some of the guys on that front line who are being asked to replace Lawrence. In your opinion, how good do they have to be, or is it more of a collective thing from the front seven because they've added guys like Arvell Reese and Tremaine Edmonds into the linebacking core that will help the Giants do better against the run?
The defensive line's focus has changed drastically, and I don't think people realize this. When you add a lot of linebackers, like fast guys that can make plays from sideline to sideline, guys that can fill holes, then the D-line's sole purpose now is to clog up and occupy blockers, to make sure guys don't just free release to the second level. Their job it's become a little harder, but at the same time, it's more defined. Now I know that if somebody isn't double teaming me, I'm going to be so far into the backfield that they're going to have a problem. If they are double teaming me, I got 4 guys that are hunters behind me that are going to make the play. So their roles are different. Some people might think it's harder. I think it's easier when you know that you have to occupy the blocker and make sure that nothing if the blocker is connected to you, that linebacker is going to be deep in the backfield making a play. Tackles for loss, running a play around the edge, tackles for loss, running guys out of bounds. If you're not connected and they get a hat on the hat across the board, then you're not doing your job, and they'll be looking for guys really soon.
And of course, I don't want to overestimate the potential or the upside of these linebackers, Howard. But, when you played and you went in practice against that Giants 3-4 defense, it was the linebacking core that was the strength of that defense. So you understand exactly how that flow goes and how having these large, powerful, tall, athletic linebackers really causes a lot of problems for an offense.
Yeah, but you got to remember back in those days, the Eric Howards, the John Washingtons, the Leonard Marshalls, these guys occupied blockers. If there was an opportunity for them to make a play, they would make the play, but they occupied blockers that you couldn't get away from those guys. You couldn't do anything with those guys in front of you. Keith Hamilton is a guy that comes to mind. It kind of springs back to mind. A guy that's big, long, tall. You're like, okay, well, he should be a defensive end or something. Then he's up the field, and like two guys are trying to hold on to him to keep him out of the play. Guys that occupy blockers wreak havoc for offensive lines because now all of a sudden you can't get to the second level. When you can't get to the second level, that linebacker has enough speed to stop the play in the backfield or not to let it cross the line of scrimmage.
Three of this linebacking core that I think draws the most interest. People talk about Abdul Carter because he came on strong at the end of last season. And I think there's a lot of curiosity as to how good he'll be in year two. And it's kind of a three-part question because I wonder how much can you expect out of Arvell Reese as a rookie stepping right out of the box? And then I also wonder, in his contract year, Kayvon Thibodeau, who has had a double-digit sack season before, but has also fought injuries and availability. This is a guy who has had a great camp, and he's hoping to have a career year. Do you have a capsule thought on those three guys, Howard? Because let's face it, if that unit's going to be as good as we think it is, those guys, they're going to have to make it happen.
Well, Thibodeau, first off, we'll go with him. He's never really played the full schedule. He's always been a little banged up in the beginning of the season with an elbow or something, and then he comes on. So if he can find a way to get all 17 games in, he'll have more than double-digit sacks. He's gonna really do his contract well, his future earnings well, if he can play all 17 games. He's a talented guy. I think the knock on him, and people always are trying to find something to say about him, is that it's the injuries. If he's healthy, when he's well, he's hard to beat. He's just got to stay well. When we think about Abdul Carter from last year, very talented kid. I like him. I like his ability to get upfield. I like his ability to get by blockers. In the pass game, where he needs to make the big jump, is he's got to be really focused in the run game. He made some great plays in the run game when the ball was going laterally, but when it's going north and south is when he really needs to actually show up and make a difference to make sure that it doesn't get past the line of scrimmage. When he makes that jump in his view and the way he plays, that's going to be big for him, and he's going to see, this year, unfortunately, that he has a young linebacker in Reese. So that's how Reese plays. Reese plays from sideline to sideline, but he also plays north and south. And I believe that watching a guy that comes in his first year play that way is going to make him think like, wait a minute, I was the first round pick last year. He's like, well, you're going to have to really focus on your north and south in this run game to make sure that you are part of the whole solution of things, and that's going to be a big thing for him when he sees that.
Tremaine Edmonds comes over from Chicago, so he's a new face. But the guy on the other side that I want to talk about is Brian Burns for a moment, because we saw him have a career year last season. Howard, I wonder how impressed you were with him, because there are a lot of folks who think he could have played with maybe some of the linebackers that were teammates of yours. He really had one heck of a year last year, was a leader, he played hurt, and was quite frankly about as dominant as he could be in his own role.
I think Burns is a throwback kind of player. I think that a little nick or a little bump doesn't sideline him. He'll go over, get it wrapped up, get a drink of water, and come back and be more ferocious when he comes back. If he's nicked up or banged up a little bit, he gets even tougher. So I don't think you want to nick him up when you're playing, because when you do, he's going to show another level to you. I think that his goal is to be the sack leader, every year, which is awesome. But again, another guy who plays north and south. He is great against the run. He makes a lot of plays in the backfield. He makes a lot of plays on the edge. I like that about him. Another thing that's very underrated about him, he's great in coverage. If he
Mhm.
drops back and he's in coverage, the guy he's covering is not getting the ball. And that's what I like about him. His ability to cover. He's got all three levels covered, and he's able to sack the quarterback.
All right, so in a few more minutes, we'll go back to my conversation with Howard Cross and we will talk about the Giants secondary, which really needs a bounce back season after going through some very, very rough moments last year, uh, as we all know, because we all watched it. All right, so let's go back over to the chat and get a couple more comments into this program. Again, folks, right below you see there on the screen the StreamYard slug. You want to give us a call, you want to give us a video call, or you just want to go over to the chat, please do participate because I'm here for you. That's why I'm here to do this program, because you, the fans, you guys want it. And I am here to give you as much Giants information as I possibly can. Um, IIP the Unknown 4 says, thank you. I missed the beginning of the live show. This season is exciting with so many unknown things. Well, I will tell you this. As much that as is unknown, because there are some unanswered questions, obviously, that the Giants need to answer, the really good news is they've got a proven head coach, one who brings a Super Bowl ring and an awful lot of playoff experience to the locker room from the moment that he stepped on campus. And if you didn't hear the early part of the show, as no doubt you have already mentioned, I told you that the Giants, they went full throttle. When they hired John Harbaugh, they gave John Harbaugh a tremendous hammer and stick to call a lot of his own shots. And he brought over 13 coaches from the Baltimore Ravens. The Giants have 22 core coaches under John Harbaugh. 13 of them came from the Ravens. So he knows. He had a winning formula there. 12 postseason appearances over 18 seasons. That much we know. All right? There's no secret there. We know that stuff. Greg Turd Haller says, Wilson likes to blitz. This is Denard Wilson, the defensive coordinator he's talking about. Wilson likes to blitz the safety. That is absolutely true. When he's got the ability to. He did not blitz much last year. Denard Wilson was the defensive coordinator with the Titans last year. A few years back, he had worked as an assistant with Harbaugh in the secondary. Jamal Adams had a 9.5 sack season under his tutelage with the Jets and made 3 Pro Bowls. That is true. Wilson also had some time there. He's been around a little bit. But here's what I want to say to you. Last year, the Titans were in the bottom third of the NFL. I believe it was roughly 21% or 22% blitz percentage. Bottom third of the league. The reason for that is he did not have the personnel to blitz. If you're going to be, and I talked about this on Big Blue Kickoff Live earlier today, but I think this is a great time to bring it up because I don't know if everybody totally understands this. And I know there's a lot of you out there who do know football, who do either played a little bit of high school ball or have spent enough of time reading about it or have, done some of your own study. I get that. So bear with me. I know sometimes people get critical of me. They say, well, you sound like you're talking, to somebody who doesn't know anything. And, well, I think part of my role in this job is to try to make sure that all the fans out there understand as much as they can about the game so that they can further enjoy the game. And if that means I have to share some very simple fundamentals, well, maybe that will allow some periphery fans who don't understand some things to enhance their enjoyment. So bear with me. If you understand what I'm going to say, fine. I'm glad that you do. But there's a lot of folks who don't. So here's the deal, all right? I'll use Wink Martindale as an example. Wink Martindale habitually was in the very top of the NFL in blitz percentage when he was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore and then with the Giants. He loves to just send guys. He always said pressure breaks pipes. So he would constantly send blitzes all the time. Well, not all the time, but commonly 45% of the time, which is a ridiculous number in the NFL. Okay? He was always amongst the top teams in blitz percentage. Well, his last year with the Ravens, when he was let go and then came to the Giants, there had been a problem with him in Baltimore because they did not have enough talent in the secondary to hold up. And he continued to be a blitz-happy monster. Well, as you guys know, whenever you blitz and you send extra guys, that now leaves your secondary exposed because you have fewer guys downfield in the defensive secondary to try to handle things in that area of the field. Whether it's a short pass and a catch and run, or a long pass over the top, or a seam pass that goes downfield, whatever the case may be. It could even be a run that breaks through the first couple of lines of defense, and now your secondary, because they're really out of position, they wind up giving up a big play on the ground. The point was, the secondary in Baltimore for a couple of years there was badly banged up, and they just weren't very good. And Wink Martindale continued to call blitz after blitz after blitz after blitz. And you know what happens? When you have a high risk, high reward kind of blitz package, you open yourself up to getting burned. And so the Ravens started to get badly burned on big plays. And the knock from the people in Baltimore on Wink Martindale at that time was that he wouldn't change his spots. He just kept being blitz happy. He kept sending and sending and sending and sending extra guys. And he virtually ignored the fact that he didn't have enough of quality in the defensive backfield or in the secondary to hold up. And so what happened? We saw a potent Ravens defense start to slip because they were giving up too many big plays as they were getting burned and beaten against their blitz. So you have to be very careful about being blitz happy. Now, I've always been one who favors more pressure. Okay, when you talk about guys playing off coverage, guys playing more zone, right? I'm a guy who's always going to want to play more jam, more press, more man-to-man. I'm going to favor more blitzes too. But you have to know how to temper that because there is a risk and a reward. And what the Giants need to do is find out in their secondary. They've got 4 guys who have NFL resumes fighting for positions for 2 starting spots on the boundary corners. Banks, Hood, Newsome, and Adebo. Adebo used to be really good for the Saints and didn't give the Giants a very good season last year. He was injured and he did not play well. Banks played well as a rookie, showed a lot of flashes and a lot of skill. Since that time under defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, his career went south. And now he's in a contract year. He had the best spring of any Giants cornerback. So we'll see if Tay Banks, playing the style of ball that he wants to play, press man coverage, that's what they want to go back to. We'll see if he can resuscitate his career. Greg Newsome, former Brown and former Jaguar, is here. He also wants to be a press man corner. He was caught with changes in coordinators, position coaches, then the trade to the Jaguars where they played off coverage. He wasn't suited to it. It didn't work out. He gets set free as a free agent. The Giants sign him with the hopes that he will compete as a press man corner. So between Banks, Newsome, and Adebo, you have 3 guys with NFL experience and some good things on their resumes. Then you also have Colton Hood, who was just drafted out of Tennessee. Look, had a really good spring. I think the two best corners this spring, this offseason on the Giants were Tay Banks and Colton Hood. I think they were the two best. We will see. I'm not predicting who's going to be week one starting, the starters. But what I will tell you is right now, Banks and Hood really helped themselves during the spring. And it's going to be a four-man fight, steel cage match, if you will, right? It's going to be a SummerSlam to find who the two starting boundary corners should be for the New York Football Giants. And then, of course, you need bounce-back seasons out of the safeties because Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland were not the players that they were expected to be last year. So this is a really good opportunity to go back to my interview with Howard Cross because that's the last unit that we've really got to talk about. We didn't address special teams, but we go back to Howard Cross now, who says he's got plenty of optimism for the offense. He's got optimism for the front seven on the other side of the ball, but the defensive backs, well, they're coming off of a subpar season.
Well, I think the Giants' biggest question mark is their secondary. The safety play, it's got to pick up a little bit. It's going to have to pick up a lot by game one because, the Cowboys have some explosive receivers all over the field. So they're going to be, first off, totally healthy and totally locked in. That's number one. When it comes down to the cornerbacks, Adebo's going to have to be Adebo. He's going to have to be the guy that they brought over to be the number one corner. Then everybody else has got to fall in place. I think Hood has a great opportunity because he had high grades, could have been a first-round pick. Everybody thought he was going to be a first-round pick, and he falls to the Giants. Now, if I am Hood, I'm thinking personally, I want to show everybody who passed me up why I was ranked so high. That's what I would be thinking about. Banks, love Banks. I want Banks to be the player he was his rookie year most of the season. How does he get back to that? I'm not sure, but that's a mental thing. I think that's what a Harbaugh and his defensive coaches are going to work on. The kid has tremendous ability, but he has to be locked in all the time. It's kind of like me in my golf game where I, lose my mind over a chip and start thinking about something else and roll the ball across the green. But you got to be locked in. As far as the other guys go, they're trying their best to find their way. And there are open spots all across the secondary. Like the slot corner is going to be a competition. The off corner is going to be the competition. And no offense to Adebo, number one corner could be a competition. Like these guys really, really have to step it up. It's great to have a great front four or a great front seven, but if you don't have guys in the secondary, it doesn't take long to release the ball, and it won't. And the defenders can't get to the quarterback in under 2 seconds sometimes.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the slot corner. I think Drew Phillips' biggest issue is consistency because he certainly has physical tools. He does get after it. He comes up in the run game. He's not afraid to tackle guys, but he's not always as consistent as I think you'd like.
Well, I think what's going to happen is, again, the way Harbaugh kind of runs a practice, the way he runs this, the way it goes, it's a little more. I don't want to say tougher because I don't want to get in trouble with the NFLPA here, but it's a little more involved, and I think the more involved practices is going to force these guys to come up, to get into positions, to make plays. I think that's going to help them out a lot. I don't think that you can play, and this is not the Giants, it's just the league in general. I don't think you can play the game without being involved more in football-like moments and having to react, put your feet in the ground, cut, brace yourself, put your hands on somebody. You have to be involved in the game, physically sparring, so to speak, in order to play the game. And the further that the league gets away from that, the harder it is for them to control it.
Final two questions, Howard. Number one, there are 3 preseason games, at least for the time being. At some point, the NFL will probably go down to 2. But right now, there are still 3. And the Dolphins and Giants will have 1 joint practice session before that second preseason game. John Harbaugh is a new coach here with the Giants. Much of his staff is also new to the Giants. So, how much do you think we will see some of the regulars play during the preseason? I know you and I usually favor those guys getting some more snaps.
I think again, it's a necessity. Um, there's a belief even in the Giants organization that you shouldn't play your starters, and the reason why you shouldn't play your starters is because you didn't want them to get hurt. There's a belief outside of every team, like the older players saying, like, if you don't play, you may get hurt in the first game. Getting hurt in the first game is just like being hurt in preseason. But financially, they don't want to get hurt until they're in season, so nothing can happen to them getting cut and everything. But my view always has been, I need to play, I need to be moving, I need to be involved so I can continue to play. If you're not really involved physically with all the moves, all the pressures, it's a tough game. Like, a lot of things are hitting you, moving you off your spot constantly. If you're not constantly doing it, it's hard to do. Will Harbaugh let these guys play or ask them to play? I don't know.
All right, go ahead.
And I don't know because of depth. I don't know if he's going to say, all right, we got enough linebackers, you guys can play a little bit. Or will he go in and give them, like, the first preseason game, give them a series or two? Give everybody a series or two and pull them out. Will they be ready by then? Or will they give them a series or two or more in the second preseason game? Third preseason game, all the young guys trying to figure out how to fill out the rest of the roster could be the way they do it. Or they could be, we're not playing anybody, everybody else is just competing, and we need to get better, could play, which is also very, very important. You might have guys that you need to get better that are going to be contributors to the team, and you might need to get them 12 snaps, 20 snaps in the game so that they can, like, start to get the feel of things and get going. But there's so many different ways and so many different philosophies of why and how to do it. I'm not sure how it's going to go.
Well, one thing we do know, Howard, is that there's a lot of roster spots that are going to be fought for. There's going to be a lot of really good battles, and a lot of players are probably going to want those snaps because they want to try to win jobs. Let me finish up with this. The Giants are spending the first 10 days of training camp at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. It's more out of necessity because of the renovations being conducted at the Giants facility, plus the World Cup stuff still has to be ripped down from the parking lots. You know all about training camps, being home or being on the road. What are some of your thoughts? How will this maybe benefit the Giants in that it's a new coaching staff trying to get familiar and develop relationships with the players? Do you think this could be a big plus for them?
Well, yes and no. And the yes is they'll have time together, only them, which is important to be around your teammates to start to get a feel for what's going on. It helps you with everything. No, because the way that the league is run now, like, they'll be coming out of that camp just about ready to put full pads on and get ready to go. Like, they don't get in full pads till like day 5 or day 6 almost, I think.
Right.
So that's most of that camp is you're really just hanging out and studying plays together. With nothing to do because you're in West Virginia. I don't even know if you got internet up there. No offense to West Virginia. I'm not trying to be mean. So, unless you're going up there to play at the Briarcliff and play golf, then you're really there just to hang out. Maybe they'll watch some movies, spend some time together. Like, there's like no real environment to go hang out and do stuff. Like, you're going to be together. So they'll get to know each other very well while they're there.
All right, so we thank Howard Cross, former Giants Super Bowl championship tight end, and of course, currently part of the Giants broadcast team as the sideline reporter. Great stuff from Howard tonight on the program, talking about the offense and the defense. I didn't get the special teams with Howard. We kind of ran out of time, but obviously the Giants special teams issues, well, they've got a whole new operation, right? Zavada right now, the undrafted rookie free agent from Michigan, seems to have a leg up, and yes, that's an intentional pun, a leg up on the kicking job, although Ben Sauls is still here. Ben Mann is an undrafted rookie free agent out of Boston College. He's the new long snapper. Jordan Stout, who's an all-star punter from the Baltimore Ravens, signed a big contract to join John Harbaugh here in East Rutherford. So it's a whole new operation on special teams, and we really don't have much of an idea who the kickoff returners and punt returners are going to be. Although I suspect Calvin Austin will be one of them. We're going to see. You know, remember, and we talked about this the other day on BBKO, Braxton Berrios, who was an all-pro kick returner with the Jets, he signed with the Giants as a backup slot guy and a special teams guy about a month or so ago. So we keep forgetting about him when we start talking about the roster. But he was brought here for a reason. He's got an all-pro resume as a kick returner. So it's going to be unbelievable. I think the wide receiver room and the defensive backs room is going to be like the most incredible steel cage match that you've ever seen. Those two positions, there are so many guys who are going to be fighting for not only starting jobs but for backup reps. They're going to have tough decisions. The Giants are going to have tough decisions at wide receiver and at defensive back. It is really going to be hard to sort through it. And they may have some tough decisions on the offensive line too, because that's another room that's got a lot of candidates in it. And they got to find the best guys. You know, ironically, and this is really cool, folks, and I want to bring this up because I think it warrants mention. In most of the last decade, we have gone into training camp talking about how the Giants' offensive line has to improve. Yes, there's always talk about an injured guy, right? There was Daniel Jones who was hurt. There was Saquon Barkley who was hurt. Okay? There was Andrew Thomas who was hurt. We've always had an injury mixed into the storyline over the course of the summer. That's true. But the one consistent that seems to have been involved with the Giants' summer storylines over the past decade was that offensive line has to get better. Boy, it is not any good. Well, we're not really talking about that this year, are we? Because last season, the Giants were in the upper half of the NFL, somewhere between 10 and 16, depending upon how you wanted to grade them and where your priorities were. The Giants were just outside the top 10, probably around 12, okay, in terms of ranking of their play on the offensive line. Now, before you push back, and somebody may hit me up on a chat, or they may hit me up with a call and push back and say, well, look at how many sacks the Giants gave up. That's impossible. They couldn't be that good of an offensive line if they gave up that many sacks. Well, folks, I go back to my film study because I assign a point, a negative point, if you will, for every sack that the offense allows during the course of the season. And by doing so, and again, I take an educated guess when I can, and then I also follow up, and I'll talk to players and coaches during the week so that I can verify my suspicions. I spend an awful lot of time doing this when I go over the game a second time every single Monday. And I think it's important to understand, okay, that the Giants, unfortunately, through all the sacks they gave up last year, 48 sacks, which is a high number. It's not a great number. I charge sacks to quarterbacks if they run into a sack unnecessarily, if they hold the ball too long and unnecessarily, they get charged with the sack. I will not penalize the offensive line for a sack if the quarterback had 5 seconds and then ran outside the pocket, got tackled or ran out of bounds for a 3-yard loss. It goes down as a sack. The offensive line doesn't get that. That goes on the quarterback. If the quarterback decides to hold the ball for 7 seconds, steps up into the pocket, and then gets dumped, that's on him. He had to throw the ball out of bounds to the lady in the second row. He could have avoided the sack, but he didn't. He took the sack instead of throwing the ball away and into the crowd. Well, according to my film review, of the 48 sacks that the Giants gave up last year, okay, the quarterbacks were responsible for 23 of those sacks. I had Jaxson Dart down for 18 of them. Okay? You see, Jaxson Dart has two things he's really got to improve on from my perspective this season. Number one is being smart enough to enhance his durability and know when to be overly physical and when not to be. We all know that. That's not a secret. His second point of emphasis, at least from my perspective, is to not take as many sacks. Know when to throw the ball away. Give up the play and live for another down. Not recklessly throw the ball into the field to play. Don't force it. Don't just throw it up and have it get intercepted, but know when to throw the ball out of bounds and abort the play and not take the sack. I had Dart giving up 18 sacks last season. I had Wilson giving up 3. I had Winston giving up 2. That, according to my very detailed tape study, which I spend hours doing every single Monday. So I want you to take that into account when you look at the Giants' sack numbers and think about, well, how good was that offensive line last year? All the other numbers show really good things. The sack number doesn't look so good. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Well, that's why it sticks out like a sore thumb, because the quarterbacks took too many. The offensive line gets blamed for them. All right, my viewer count has continued to go up every 5 minutes. It keeps going up, and keeps going up. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go a little bit longer here, because as long as you folks want to interact with me, it is the first day of camp. I don't think it makes any sense to just cut you guys off. You're excited. You're enthused. The Knicks won the NBA championship. That's in our rearview mirror right now. So let me see if I can continue. If you guys have more to say and more to ask me about, I will try to continue a little bit longer, as long as we continue to build some momentum, as the numbers continue to go up. And they've been going up steadily, even over the last 20 minutes of this program since 9 o'clock started. And I appreciate all of you for coming on to the program, because I know, let's face it, there are some legitimate media who are doing shows like this. And Lord knows, I've been around a long time. Then there are other folks who are just content creators and are just fans and just want to have their own social gathering, if you will. And I know there are tons of those too. So there are many places where you guys could choose to click on to talk about Giants football or listen to Giants football stuff. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being loyal enough to come on here and to interact and hopefully have a good time and continue discussing New York Giants football. Greg Turd Haller says, Howard Cross, Bama and New York Giant legend, from Moa to Bavaro to Cross, who kept the tight end pantheon going all the way to Shockey, where the lineage died. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, Jake Ballard and Kevin Boss actually made big plays in Super Bowls against the Patriots in 2007 and in 2011. Now, did guys like Boss and Jake Ballard have big-time stats? Did they have all-pro seasons? No, they didn't. But they made important plays. I mean, you know what Boss did in Super Bowl 42. He had the longest pass play that the Giants had in the game, brought them into New England territory on a very important drive. You know what Jake Ballard did. He had some very important catches during that 2011 season. You know that. Um, no, I'm not going to say the lineage died at all. I won't say that at all. Greg also says we will see how Nagy, that's Matt Nagy, the Giants offensive coordinator who came over after being with the Kansas City Chiefs. We will see how Nagy and his mentor Andy Reid, Mike Holmgren, and Bill Walsh' West Coast offensive philosophy will succeed in New York. We've been chasing it since the 80s. Greg, here's my prediction for that. John Harbaugh wants to play bully ball. He wants to pound it. He wants to grind it. He wants to have play action. And he wants to physically abuse the line of scrimmage with his offensive line. I don't think you're going to see a lot of flash and dash. I do think you'll see motion. I think you'll see the ball spread around to different receivers out of different formations. Yes, 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 yes. But typically, when people talk about the West Coast offense, they talk about an offense that's more heavily geared toward the pass and more heavily geared towards horizontal passes, which are designed for yards after the catch. That's typically what a West Coast offense does. Get rid of the ball quickly and do those kinds of things. I don't necessarily believe that's what we're going to see from this Giants offense because John Harbaugh wants to play bully ball. He wants to ground and pound, and that is why he brought Patrick Ricard up from the Baltimore Ravens. Greg also says, Paulie, I've been binge watching the 56-63 New York Giants highlights for the last 3 nights. I love that team and the old NFL Weekly highlight shows back then. Well, you're not going to get any argument from me because, basically the way I look at it, Greg, I've covered the team for 44 years. I do consider myself a Giants historian. I have studied the Giants going back to 1958 because I believe that that's the line of delineation for modern football. When the Giants lost to the Indianapolis Colts in overtime in the first ever sudden death game in NFL history for the NFL championship in 58, that was the first ever nationally televised NFL game. And most people credit that with being the game that lifted the National Football League into the modern era. And it became a much bigger part of the American consciousness. So I have made it my business to study an awful lot about that Giants team. Now, I know they beat Chicago in 56 for the title, Charlie Connerly, I understand that. But 58, because of that historic line that was drawn in the sand, that's where I basically start my Giants history. And I've given an awful lot of time and years to continue that. From the 58 team that lost to the Colts, then in 59 they got plastered by the Colts, right? You remember that. Johnny Unitas and company down in Municipal Stadium, they left no doubt in that rematch in 59. And then Tittle comes in 61 and leads them to 3 consecutive NFL championship games. And we all know what happened in those games against the Packers and the Bears and the frozen field out in Chicago when Tittle got banged into on his knee. I mean, that was a rough one because let's face it, the Giants, they were a throwing team. And in that kind of weather and with Tittle getting hurt, they were not going to win that game in Chicago. It was just not going to happen. And obviously the 2 games against the Packers, well, I hate to say it, but Vince Lombardi had a better team in both of those seasons. The one at Yankee Stadium and then the one out at Lambeau. Lombardi had a better team. And they won both of those games too. So the Giants, lost 3 consecutive championship games from 61 to 63. I understand that. But those teams, the fact that they went to the championship game in 56, 58, 59, 61, 62, and 63. That's 6 championship games. 6. I know there were fewer teams, but they still went to 6 NFL championship games over the course of 7 seasons. You know, that when I grew up as a kid, that was supposedly the golden era of New York Giants football, right? That was the golden era. Jim Lee Howell, and then Ali Sherman, and then 17 years of football that didn't touch the playoffs, the black hole, if you will, which is the time where I grew up. And I certainly understand that because I lived it. I didn't have to study those years because I lived those years, but I had to study the Jim Lee Howell and Ali Sherman teams. And then, of course, you had the Parcells teams and the Coughlin teams who brought luster and the golden touch back to Giants football. And I think we're going to see some of that also return under John Harbaugh. Greg says, I think Javon Holland is smart enough to execute what Denard Wilson wants, the DC, but is he physically capable is the question. Well, the Giants believe that, okay? The Giants believe that. That's why they signed him to a big contract last year. And, of course, it didn't work out. We've had that conversation. But we've got the coaching change, and we'll see. Greg says, what does Greg say here? Greg says, he comes back, we are not playing press man per se Poli, but cover 3, man match, which is man principles, cover 6, which cover 4, 2 split coverages, and quarters. Greg, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to play yet because all I've seen are the spring drills. I've seen the mini camp. I've seen the spring drills. Okay? I don't want to assume that we are going to do whatever Denard Wilson did with the Tennessee Titans because I believe the Giants have more talent front to back on this defense than what Denard Wilson had with the Tennessee Titans. So I don't believe that we will play anything exactly like what you saw him call for when he was the coordinator in Tennessee. I will tell you this. I am very curious to see what he will do. Quite frankly, Greg, I am very much into the press man corner stuff. I said that's what I'm into. We'll see how they work it. You can't do the same thing all the time. You can't play press man all the time, just like you can't blitz all the time. I understand that. I'm totally on board. You've got to mix and match. You've got to disguise. Heck, I'm even all about sometimes playing 2 down linemen, 1 down lineman, no down lineman. I'm even willing, if I'm the defensive coordinator with this Giants lineup, I might even see some plays within amoeba defense where you have nobody with their hand in the ground and you just have guys standing up and roaming around along the line of scrimmage. Rex Ryan used to do that when he was in Baltimore. The amoeba defense. I'm into the bear fronts, the 5-man fronts. I'm into going 4 down linemen if the matchup calls for it in certain situations. Oh yeah, I'm multiple. I'm a multiple guy. As I put my head into coordinators, the offensive and defensive coordinators, which I do every single week. When I study the tapes on Monday, I look at the numbers, I look at the trends, I look at the stats. I figure out on Tuesday, if I was going to be the defensive and offensive coordinator, what would I do to this other team? What are the paths to victory that the Giants can use? And what are the paths to victory that the opponent can use? And how does that stack up for the Giants? Oh, I play these games all the time. Greg, sometimes I'm up till 4 o'clock in the morning, diagramming plays, X's and O's all over the place, because that's what I do. I enjoy playing coordinator, either offense or defense during the week. I enjoy doing that. But I'm also one of these guys who is not stuck in the mud and saying, oh, this is what we're going to do and that's all we're doing. I am a very creative type guy. I am all about multiple looks, and doing things differently too. Remember a few years ago when the Chargers had a package in where they weren't just going nickel or dime, they were going quarters. And not quarters in terms of zone defense in the secondary. When they said quarters, they meant they were playing 7 defensive backs. Okay? I mean, you want to talk scheme, I can talk scheme with you all day, and there are so many ways to go. And that's why I'm excited, though, about Denard Wilson, because I think he's going to mix and match. And that's what I love. That's what I love. All right, Greg has a whole list here. He wants to talk scheme. Folks, I'm not going to bore you with it because I know there's a whole bunch of people who will not want to get into this. So I'm just going to pass all of this stuff. Sue Glow 84, what's up, Paulie baby? Training camp has started. That's what's up. So Greg says 41 sacks allowed is NFL average and 48 is slightly above average. Yeah, I get it, but that's not very good. If you want to be a top 10 offensive line, right, you got to allow well under that. Okay? 48 does not make you a top 10 offensive line. Far from it. But again, that's the number. That's the number last year. 48 sacks. And I've got the video evidence of how many the quarterbacks were responsible for. I study this stuff, so I know. Soul Glow 84, I really want to know how his standing stance mechanics will affect his throwing performance. Well, Soul Glow, we're going to go a little bit further here. All right, I'm going to try to go a little bit further, try to finish off. I'm going to try to finish off here what's going on. Dart, what we believe is going to operate more under center this year. That's what we think. We don't know that, but that's what we think. There'll be some less shotgun stuff, which of course impacts his footwork. Okay? Also impacts the timing and of how you place your eyes, because if you have to. Now, one thing Phil Simms used to do, and I don't know how many of you guys remember watching Phil Simms play, a lot of times Phil would backpedal. Phil wouldn't do your typical, side dropping back. Phil would backpedal a lot of times because he didn't want to take his eye off the field of play. So I think that's a bigger item right now for me when I look at Jaxson Dart. I'm more interested in how is he going to operate more under center this year, which is something he's not used to nearly as much. He wasn't in college, and he wasn't necessarily that way either with the Giants as a rookie. Greg says, smash the like button. Well, thank you, Greg. I don't mean to ignore you, but I know that if we're going to get deep into starting to talk about schemes and plays, we're going to lose a lot of the people who have joined the program. I got to try to keep this thing as simple as I can and as wide-ranging as I can, and hopefully everybody will get some sense of enjoyment out of it. If we get too deep into the weeds on these schemes, and believe me, I came in under Belichick and Parcells, so I could get pretty heavy on schemes, but this is not the place to do it. But I appreciate it. Thank you. Soul Glow 84 says, go Knicks. He obviously knows me from Big Blue Kickoff Live when me and John Schmelk gave Lance Meadow a very, very, very hard time about the Knicks championship. Greg says, get some of this Giants love, Paulie. If we weren't here, we would be somewhere else in Giants Nation. Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Like, look, that's why I say I'm very grateful to all of you who joined the program. Soul Glow 84. Okay, Paul, what do you think about the two players we picked up, Davidson and Moore, and John not addressing the real issues like long snapper and a kicker? Want to hear your thoughts. All right. First thing, Davidson, defensive line. We know the Giants have to have like an open call on defensive linemen because Robertson Harris is hurt. They're hoping he's going to get back near the end of the season. Okay, that's one problem. Okay, obviously the Giants, they liked him, but he's not available now. Dexter Lawrence was traded to Tennessee, and they signed DJ Reader. They signed Shelby Harris. They're hoping that Darius Alexander continues his surge from the final month of last season. They still have guys like Chauncey Golston back on the team. They drafted Bobby Travis, Jamison Travis. Sam Roberts came off PUP today. Lecky Fotu, former Raider, is in camp. They got a bunch of guys. Here's what they did. They went crazy and stacked up. They went to the supermarket and they stacked up 2 full arms worth of, let's take as many of these defensive linemen as we can get, scoop them up and bring them into our locker room, and let's see if we can find a few guys who can play. That's where it's at. We think Darius Alexander's a player. We know DJ Reader's a player. Hopefully he has a lot left. And we think Shelby Harris is a player, and hopefully he has a lot left. Those are the guys, those are the 3 guys right now who you have to feel the best about in terms of down linemen. Davidson is just another one of these other guys who are going to be thrown into the steel cage and being told, fight it out. Let's see who climbs through the door or over the roof, over the top of the steel cage and touches the floor, right? Okay. Moore, tight end. He's a big guy. He's had injuries. He's like 6'5", 255 pounds. He's a blocking tight end. We know that Harbaugh loves to play with 2 tight ends, sometimes 3 tight ends on the field at the same time. He's big on that stuff. He wants to pound the ball. Okay, great. Well, Chris Manhertz right now is a pretty darn good, physical, big, strapping young man who blocks very, very well. Manhertz is on the other side of 30. So if they're going to keep a blocking tight end, that's the guy you're going to have to beat. You're going to have to beat out Chris Manhertz if you want to be a blocking tight end on this team. We know they're going to keep Likely. We know they're going to keep Theo Johnson. I think Fedoni, with the injury history he's had, I suspect he might be a practice squad guy, to be honest. I mean, he just got cleared today by passing his physical, but I suspect he's a practice squad guy. So if you're going to keep a 3rd tight end and you want that guy to be a bruiser, well, it's going to be up to Chris Manhertz and whoever else is on the back of that depth chart. Tyler Moore is there right now. Tanner Connor, former 49er, is also there. I like Manhertz's chances, to be perfectly honest with you. You say Harbaugh not addressing the real issues like long snapper and a kicker. That's not true. They believe that they've got a good long snapper in Ben Mann. Okay? They believe that he is the guy. I don't know. To be frank with you, I don't watch tape about on long snappers. I don't. In college, rookie free agent. They really like him. He's the guy. Right now, they don't really have any competition for him. Okay? Brian Hudson, who is the 3rd string center at the moment, he has some experience as a long snapper. So he's the backup long snapper right now. But I think they believe that Mann is fine. As far as the kicker goes, Ben Sauls made all of his kicks the last month of last season. You guys know that. I don't have to tell you. You know that. But I do believe they want somebody with a bigger frame and a more powerful leg. So Dominic Zavada comes out of the University of Michigan as an undrafted rookie free agent. And they decided that they were going to take a shot with him. Now, when he's really good, he's really good. But he's also had inconsistencies throughout his college career. Now, for example, okay, I think it's important to give you some of these numbers so that you have an understanding. And I think it's entirely possible that the Giants kicker in week 1 is not on the roster. I'm not convinced that Sauls or Zvada are going to be the kicker week 1. I'm not convinced. Could it be? Sure it could. But I'm not convinced right now. Now, Zavada, I wrote down some notes on him. Where are my notes on him? Zavada. Oh, I don't know where my notes are. Yeah, Sauls was 8 of 8 on field goals last year, 7 of 7 on PATs with a long of 45. Okay, Zavada. Career 83% field goal percentage with the Wolverines, but last year was only 17 out of 25 for 68%. His long was 56. He was at Arkansas State before he went to Michigan. But here's the interesting part. For his career, he is 11 of 13 from 50 yards or longer. The ball comes off his leg with so much force and so much pop, and you hear the sound. It reminds me of when Aldrich Rosas was here some years ago. Rosas, similar situation, but he was a much bigger man. And when he kicked the ball, it exploded off of his foot. That's the way Zavada is. I don't know. May one of these two guys win the job? Maybe. Or is it going to wind up being somebody else? Carlson, who was with the Raiders last year, is the best of the available free agent kickers right now on the street. If you were interested in signing a veteran. Of course, there are going to be guys cut too. Anyway, Harbaugh knows that special teams are 1/3 of the game, especially with his background of special teams when he first got into the NFL. So he's not going to ignore it. Trust me, he will have an appropriate kicker ready for week 1, whoever that turns out to be. Big Blue 4751. Good evening, Paul. Run with power. Hope all is well. Absolutely. Greg says, Greg Turd Hauler says again, yeah, Lombardi took the New York Giants in the late 50s to Green Bay, including Emlyn Tunnell. Don Chandler, too. Do you remember Don Chandler, the punter, kicker? And beat us 2 times in the NFL championships, and Landry's Cowboys terrorized us the next 15 years. Laugh out loud. Yes. And Greg mentions, yes, facts, Paulie, Phil Simms incorporated both drops, the back pedal specifically in the gun, and the lateral shuffle out from center. He was effective at both. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Phil was very comfortable doing the back pedal. And he's not the only one who's done it. I mean, there have been other guys who have done the back pedal too. I mean, Dan Marino is one of them. Greg Turd Hurler says, appreciate you, Paulie, and the 44 years and lifelong commitment to this team. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your commitment to the program. How about that? And the fact that you also study Giants history. I always think that that's a cool thing. Soul Glow 84 says, Ben Soul can't kick over 45 yards. Yikes. There's no doubt Zavada has a stronger leg than Saul's. I don't disagree with that. I've seen it. I've watched it all camp, all spring camp. I've seen it. Yes, Zavada has a cannon of a leg. Ben Sauls does not. Doesn't mean he can't do it. I mean, remember, at the end of the season last year when he was perfect, he kicked at the end of the season. And there were some of those games that were played at MetLife Stadium in the cold and the wind. not the best of conditions. Of course, Zavada, playing at the University of Michigan the last 2 years, also did not play or kick in the best of conditions either. That's why I'm telling you, my man. And the thing about Carlson with the Raiders last year, remember, look at the division he plays in, the AFC West. Vegas has a dome. They're playing inside, right? So you got to take that into account. And then also what? They play Kansas City, they play Denver, and they play the Chargers. Chargers, they got a roof. Denver, all right, it can get a little cold there in the wintertime. I get it. Kansas City, sometimes it can too. But you get the point. You do have to consider that stuff. Look, it was because of the cold weather that Matt Barr kicked in Pittsburgh when he was with the Steelers, that when the Giants were looking for a kicker during the 1990 Super Bowl season, Parcells said, go get Matt Barr. Barr was cut by the Steelers. And Parcells had very little patience for kickers. He believed that all kickers in those days had to make at least 75% of the field goals. Barr kicked under horrific conditions in Pittsburgh, and he was very good. So when he was available, that's why Parcells went and got him. He didn't have the strongest leg, okay? Didn't have huge booming kickoffs. Wasn't going to hit a 60-yarder. No, none of that stuff. But he knew how to kick in miserable winter conditions. And of course, as you all know, he also liked to tackle people. He wasn't afraid to tackle kickoff returners because Matt Barr was a real football player, not just a kicker. Remember, he had played a little bit of professional soccer as well, besides being an NFL kicker. All right, finally, Greg says, think we will pass to set up the run using Callahan to script the first few drives, then handing the reins to Nagy and his West Coast running game. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the first 2 games of the season, you're going up against a high-powered offense that has a big-time passing attack. The Cowboys have great weapons in the passing game. The Rams have really terrific weapons in the passing game. That says to me, first things first, at least for those first 2 games, pound it, pound it, pound it. Run it, run it, run it. Control the clock, slow the game down to a crawl, try to beat them up, and don't put your secondary in jeopardy, at least for the first 2 weeks of the season. Now, after that, the Giants are going to play the likes of Arizona and Washington. If you want to start fooling around with a little more passing at that point, go right ahead. But in the first 2 weeks, I would absolutely pound, pound, and pound. I would not open up with the pass game in the first 2 weeks of the season. Absolutely not. All right. That'll do it for today's program. I see Greg's got another. All right, real quick, I'll get to it. He says, think Nagy will incorporate the Roger Craig and Tom Rothman role with Scott and Ricard, or even Tracy and Scott. Let Scott play Rothman's role, but like old school football, who actually carries the ball. Greg, there are so many possibilities right now. Look, I was talking on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I want to see a jumbo package. I want to see in goal line and short yardage, the Giants line up with 6 offensive linemen. I want Evan Neal to be the 6th offensive lineman. Okay? And I want to go absolute jumbo power with Ricard leading the way at fullback and Neal as the 6th lineman. That's the kind of stuff that I talk about. That's why I stay up till 4 in the morning, because I think about this stuff. I'm crazy. I don't expect you to be crazy. I'm crazy, and I know it. I just love the game. I've loved it ever since I can remember. And I'm into the X's and the O's. And I try to strategize as best as I can. But yes, that's one of the things I'm thinking about. Jumbo package, 6 linemen, and Ricard at fullback. How'd you like to be a middle linebacker dealing with that stuff coming at you? Talking about how many thousands of pounds of beef? Just slamming it down your throat? Holy smokes. All right, folks, that'll do it. We have gone 2 hours, and I appreciate it. We've got over 600 live folks watching the program live tonight. I know most of you people seem to like to watch this show live. Not too many of you like to do it on the archive, and I appreciate that because this is an interactive show. This show is as much yours as it is mine because I want to do interaction. I don't want to just sit here, talk to myself, and pontificate. That doesn't do me any good. I like to interact with people. I want give and take. I think it's more fun. I think it's more informative. So that's why I do the show the way I do it. It does great live numbers. Everybody seems to, I get a lot of people who really like the live show, but they don't like the archive too much. Well, whatever. I get it. Greg, thank you. He says thanks to me and thanks to you, of course, as well. Our thanks as well to former Giants Super Bowl tight end and radio sideline reporter Howard Cross. If you missed any of the interview with Howard, we went through all of the units on the Giants' offense and defense. It was broken up into 3 portions during the first 70 minutes or so of the show. If you like, go back to the YouTube channel after we're done here tonight and simply put, scrape through if you want all the other stuff and just go to the Howard Cross segments if you like. Okay? That's fine. No problem. But I invite you to do that. Howard played this game for a long time. He's one of the all-time great Giants. He's a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. I'm happy to work with him, happy to be a teammate with him. But he's also got a lot to say because he knows an awful lot about football and going to Alabama and then playing for the Giants. So there's a lot of great stuff there. And I invite you to go back to the archive and check out what Howard Cross had to say as the New York Football Giants open training camp here in 2026. Once again, folks, I remind you, we will not do a show next week as there is no game coming up at the end of the week. But the following week, the week of August the 10th, we will be back to do a program. Keep it tuned to my Twitter page on X at GiantsWFAN. I will get you a promo as soon as I possibly can. When are we going to be on that week? I don't know. Will it be a Tuesday? Will it be a Wednesday? Will it be a Thursday? I'm not quite sure yet. It'll depend on how the Giants' practice schedule works out and what they're doing and what their media avails are. If there's any big news that kind of insists that we go on that night. But I will be back with our regularly scheduled programming starting that week as the Giants get set for the preseason opener August 15th at MetLife Stadium against the Minnesota Vikings. So, for now, I thank you for partaking in this 2-hour New York Giants training camp and regular season preview for John Harbaugh's first year as head coach of the New York Football Giants. And yeah, he got me jacked up. I love the attitude, I love the enthusiasm, and I love the pride that he is showing in taking on this challenge. That'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live, part of the New York Giants on SI Media Network. Until next time, I'm Paul Dottino. So long, everybody.